The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita in this way, saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajnaparamita. And the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and praised Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Kala.
Yambe ne jo dhampa ne ngoshe jai lora ye rupa vola mai bujen zi ne zoran rozora ya lo. Samarayam he niyata om gate gate parasangate buddhiso baba gonja sonji kai deme doje she vadaji me vadaji she vadaji nagi baji me dumbe judanji jeringo yeso yerin dunya ye yo ye wada me don me na re wa dan dom ba yun jin bun zun zun ya yi na ji ya na le yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this mandala to you. Idam Guru Radha Mandalagam Niradayami Yadanjadi Yanam La Yanju Badulani Yazuni Nagi Yuni Yibezunam Yinrula Ben Yazani Rubaryo Nidan Jodi Yanam La Yanju Badulani Yazuni Nagi Yuni Yibezunam Yinrula Ben Yazani Rubaryo Yanjari Yanala Yanju Badulani Yazuni Nagi Juni Jibezunan Yanjula Vinyazani Ruvaryo.
What was Lando was the Chong did a church of Jibson to Shiva Shavate Lando, that Landing I do know what is something but that Chong the Tomo Lajiba, Ding on did the Tomo Lajiba, Chibi Lajiba, that's Haji Jenasum. That Jibby Chong the Tomo Lajiba, the Lasamba Jong, the Samba Chibi, Tela Lotu Savach, Sajison Chigua. That the name Samba Jong, the Jiden Shama Locheva, Jiden Shama di Totemba. That Jiden Shama di Totemba, John to the Landing in Marbe. That John to the La Johnson to Joe, Johnson, Yu, Johnson, Chu, Johnson to Jero, Jagana Tananga Sude, Johnson, 추드 카돌레드 마다 추드라 유엔 시비군의 저순도와 차바 시비군의 저순도와 안에 차바 시비군 저순도 킬레비군 저순도와 제도 마마군 저순도와 어디지 말이야 다 도마 유엔 시비군 저순도와들라 상지 주엔 추지 유엔 근리 주엔 어디로 차지로와 다드네 도저 루차는 니바 다 처바시비군 저순도와 처바시비군 저순도와 안노데 람림 쳔모도 사지도 그러잖아. 처바시비군 저순도와 람림 쳔모진 자단 주지시 질도와.
So once again we are looking at Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, a commentary on Lord Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, that states in the beginning, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics, or I shall define these three clearly. So here, Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment has an outline that we find dealing with the training of the three capacities under the major heading of the actual way to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. So under that we have training the mind, or training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and then training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. So then beginning with that first category of training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, we have the first point that's made, training that deals with the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, and then a second category that says the measure of that training of thought of a person of small capacity, and then a third category or point that's made that dispels any misconceptions that one might have about a person of small capacity. So that first category, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with persons of a small capacity, has three categories. The first category, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, has two categories: developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then the next category of relying on a means for achieving happiness in one's next life. So we've concluded the category of developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then now we're in the category of relying on the means for achieving happiness in one's next life, so the reliance upon method section. So that section begins with two major headings. The first major heading is developing the state of refuge, the entrance into the instruction or excellent teaching. And then the second category of developing faith and conviction in karma and its results. So these are the first two categories that are shown in the point of relying on the means for achieving happiness in one's next life. So it's the first training in going for refuge, the entrance or gateway into the excellent instruction, and then the developing faith and conviction in karma and its results. So we're in the section now. Now, if looking at the section dealing with refuge, we find that there are four categories that deal with refuge in order to explain it. First, refuge is the causes of going for refuge. Second point that's made based on that, the objects to which you go for refuge. Two, the next point is based on that, the objects you go for refuge. Two, the way you go for refuge. And then the precepts related to going for refuge, or the advices related to going for refuge. So then, if we look within that, we're dealing with the category of the way you go for refuge. And then under the major heading of the way you go for refuge, there are 4 categories. First, going for refuge by knowing the excellent qualities. Second, going for refuge by knowing the distinctions. Third, going for refuge through commitment. And fourth, going for refuge by not acknowledging other refuges. So when we look at that first category of going for refuge by way of knowing the excellent qualities, we find there are 4 points that are made. The excellent qualities of the Buddha, the excellent qualities of the Dharma, and the excellent qualities of the Sangha. So we've gone through all of those points, the excellent qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which deals with that first category. So we've completed the going for refuge by way of knowing the excellent qualities, and now we're in the section that deals with going for refuge by way of knowing the distinctions. So the distinctions, there are going to be 6 points that are made. So I just have to find out where that is in the English. So it's on page 188 in the English, where we're going to begin, going for refuge by way of knowing the distinctions, and on page 141 in the Tibetan. That's so.
What the truth is, Chebashibagon Johnson wrote the Saji Truge.
That's so.
Trugan Tangazu, Gadachin Saber with the Ruru Junior and Marba.
That's so.
Chebashibagon Josu Swanes and as what the Chebashibagon Josuan, Duane, Juan Tar, Conjus on Nappens, Cheba, Shane Johnson Rose.
That's so.
That Conjus on Nappens, Cheba, the Abisheba. 아네 정도 야부용 거저 말해 정도 아는 가서 매매되게 매 야부시바 이나 아니 매들 가부지로 잘라들 매대 야부시바 이나 아네 놓고 잘라들 가부지로 모자다 캄바다도 매대 야부시도 놓고 가부지로 된나지와 건조송에 된다 남편이 차바도 야부시바 이나 정도 야부용 거 말해 다 전일을 주비 잡았는 사직권주네 뭐버도가 주비 생일라 출권주네 대인들보다 근육권주네 현재 명하게 도와주비 생일도스 어때 전일을 주비 잡아 어떠바들에도와
맞아
틀리지 잡았네 렘바들 롱보바다 녀모다 동해봉알라 메바다스 안에 뭐버 도와주비 틀리지 노스 어때 사주 건축 틀레 초건축 틀레 근육 건축 틀레 정도 어때 된거여서와 다음에 비쳐봐 가정 가서 어때면 비쳐봐 어떨 해도 말이야 알아 어떠봐도 루즈라잖아.
Okay, that's teaching now. So this section that deals with going for refuge by way of knowing the distinctions or by way of knowing the differences has 6 points that are going to be made, or 6 distinctions, if you will. So the first is the distinction based on defining characteristics. The second is the distinction based on enlightened activities. The third, the distinction based on devotion or aspiration. The fourth is the distinction based on practice. Fifth, distinction based on reflection, and recollection rather. And the sixth is the distinction based on the increase of merit. So the first point that's made, we find Lamrim Tsong-kha-pa brings up a point from Asanga's compendium of determinations, where it says in the English text here, according to the compendium of determinations, you go for refuge after understanding the distinctions among the 3 jewels. So here this is specifically talking about the section that will to come of the 6 distinctions, but the distinctions of the excellent qualities of the 3 jewels and so forth are presented previously in the section dealing with the excellent qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So once you know the excellent qualities and so forth, then one will go for refuge. And it's in the same way that when one knows the benefits, for instance, of a medicine, the excellent qualities or the quality of a medication, then he or she will want to go go to or take that medication. The same holds true for any kind of thing, any item, material item. Once you know all about a car or what a car is and the benefits, then you'll know or a house, for instance, then you'll like that object. You'll want to have that object. You'll go towards that object. The gawa is you would like that object. So this is very similar. Once you know the excellent qualities and the differences related to these different jewels, then you can truly go for refuge because you truly know the facts about them, or you truly know their essence, if you will. So you know their excellence. So then the next point is the distinction based on defining characteristics. So here it says, the Buddha jewel has the defining characteristics of full, perfect enlightenment. The teaching jewel has the defining characteristics of arising from the Buddha jewel. And quite literally in the Tibetan, it says the teaching jewel, it doesn't even say the teaching jewel, it says the Dharma jewel is a result of that. So that being the Buddha jewel. The Buddha jewel is inferred in the that in the Tibetan. And then the community jewel has a defining characteristic of correct practice by means of personal instruction. So here the community jewel is referring to what we've been calling those aspiring to virtue jewel, and jewel is actually better to translated as a supreme rarity. Here we find the points made about the differences based on the definitions or defining characteristics. The next point is the distinction based on enlightened activity. So it says the Buddha has the enlightened activity of giving sermons or giving the proper instruction of scripture. The teaching has the enlightened activity of focusing on the eradication of the afflictions and suffering. So the object of observation of the teaching's enlightened activity is the eradication of afflictions and suffering. And it says the community or those aspiring to virtue have the enlightened activities of fostering enthusiasm or fostering confidence in one's own abilities. So within this fostering enthusiasm, it's the idea that it gives someone the incentive, the belief that it's possible. So that's within that enthusiasm word here. And then the next point that's made is the distinction based on devotion or aspiration. So that's where we left off last time. We started to go over the devotion or aspiration. So that's the third, number 3. Sumba mupi jebar.
And Conjunction Garden Jabres, Conjunction Jago, Carosina, and Conjunction de Carso Deja de la Teba Netuda Teme dans Jansen da, and the Carre, what the Carso Tat, and Teba Chembi region.
Okay.
Conjunction Garden Jabresina, Teba Chembi region. And the Shanju Samba Zuge, Conjunction on the Sanju Control Gavio.
Okay.
Sanju Control Nabachibures, T. Chana, and the Sanju Control Jabares, Tambuche.
Lesser.
Tanyeba de Casoreta, Ranger Marva,
Lesser.
Ranger the Chu Control Gavres, Ranger de Sebatami, the Shanju de Jebadan, Dramen Legionanjo con Chutamala, what the Kumabashi Chibures, two Chu Control Gavioares. Vietnam, Chu Control Charles Javares, Rajak Mabad, Chu Control Mabashi Oares. And then you do there, and the Gagata Ganuta Mabutubala Tunamato, and the Contagion to go Mare, and the Ganu Control Gabares. They is the Ganu Control there, and you do let in Charles Javares, Marva. Dumba Temple, how do you jam? Tebas on the Shays on La. Mabanaji Onshine, Chauson Nabajava is what the Japamudu. Najin is on the Dizarota. Then Temba in the Sanji Conjumarba. Temba in Chu Conjuji. How does a good new control? what conscious on the Kanis Javasana, Tebas on shares on last, Mabana, Tebas on the shares on la, Tebas on gay, Kanjasu, Mabamanos on your Tea Chane, and then Sanji Conju, Chu Conju, Gunu Conju Javaris, what they drum to what.
Then the Rangel, Chu Long, Gare.
Rangel does work, Rangel to could chill. That number Raja Landa, Ponja to Gasheguro. Social Raja, Sir Tabi Rajas Yin Udwa. Social Rajas number, and the Yankuni Pachati, and Raja Land to Gondon Gasheguro. The religion Jaka Raja Jiurba. I don't quite to what set Tobale on the Lana, could think in the Tembi to the children do the drum maybe non to the Mataba to Alasua. What the children, Matu Kana Kesha Song Memorua, Kana Kesha to Sombayana, contingent Chung, two Chukunjulu Mabashe waters, go there the land, or the Julia, or to Mabashe Mero. Chukunju tells our Marba.
Bless it. So the 3 jewels, what is the reason for the number given? So what's the point of there being 3? So here we find in the Lord Maitreya's Sublime Continuum, we find in the beginning section a quote to point out the reasoning behind, I can check this at the break, the reasoning behind there being 3 vehicles. The Lord Maitreya says, there being the teacher, his teaching, and his disciples leads to respective aspiration towards 3 vehicles, and to 3 different activities of veneration. Viewing this, the refuge is shown as threefold. So this is in Lord Maitreya's Sublime Continuum. So here, the teacher is referring to Lord Buddha in this case. The teaching is referring to the Dharma in this case. And then his disciples are referring to the Sangha in this case, or those aspiring to virtue. So then it says, leads to the respective aspirations towards 3 vehicles. So the 3 different vehicles aspire to the different jewels, or have a liking for, or an affinity for. You could translate this word mupa as so many different ways, of an affinity for different jewels. So what is the reason for this? So what are the 3 vehicles? The 3 vehicles are referring to the hearer's vehicle, the solitary realizer's vehicle, and the bodhisattva vehicle. So it says that's why there are 3, the refuge is threefold. So we begin with the Buddha. The bodhisattvas have as their goal complete Buddhahood. So it's for this reason that we say that the bodhisattva vehicle, those in the bodhisattva vehicle have an affinity towards the Buddha jewel. So this is the reason they go for refuge and aspire to be the Buddha. So they go for refuge mainly to the Buddha jewel. The next point that's made deals with the Dharma. And in this case, we're speaking of the solitary realizer vehicle. The solitary realizer don't rely on outside instructions. There are 2 types of solitary realizers. I'll check this at the break. Like a rhinoceros and absorption. I'm sorry, I just don't remember the 2 divisions. One first recognizes the afflictions and those to be abandoned, and then the other relies on complete silence and single-pointed concentration to manifest those pathways and realizations in a solitary place. So it's the Dharma that's truly the source of their refuge. It's the Dharma jewel, the path and the abandonments and so forth. So it's for this reason that they say the vehicle of the Pratyeka Buddha, or solitary realizer, goes for refuge to the Dharma jewel. And the final jewel, the spiritual, those aspiring to virtue, or the Sangha jewel, needs to have instructions from teachers. Then there is a necessary to have the superiors in their life in order to give them instructions and so forth, so that they can reach the state of foe destroyer. It's not possible for the hearers without instruction and so forth to reach the state of foe destroyer, and it's that for that reason that they have a particular affinity or connection towards the Sangha jewel. So here, Lord Maitreya posits that there are 3 jewels because there are 3 vehicles that have 3 different aspirations or connections or affinities towards those different jewels for specific reasons. So this is the point that's made in the Sublime Continuum by Lord Maitreya. So the next section, the mupi nge injike lagu. Okay, so then number 3, the distinction based on devotion. You should appreciate the Buddha as the one to venerate and serve. You should appreciate the teaching as that which is to be realized, and you should appreciate the community as those with whom you should associate because they have attributes that are similar to your own. So this is the distinction based on devotion. So now we move on to the distinction based on practice. Okay, Drupi. Drupi Rimba. Kagi. Lasa NGK Lasar. Yine Delpa Lamasun. De Lasar. De Lasar. So then we begin with you should appreciate the Buddha as one to venerate and serve, or respect and pay homage, respect and venerate and serve. So here the Bodhisattva goes for refuge to the Buddha jewel. And translators note, we're not saying only, we're saying affinity for, more of a devotion or affinity towards the specific jewels because of their goals and so forth and practices. Translator note finished. So the Buddha is one to venerate and serve. So the Bodhisattvas go for refuge and have an affinity towards the Buddha. So this is the reason for positing the first jewel. The Buddha jewel. The second jewel is dealt with here. It said you should appreciate the teaching as that which is to be realized. So within the Four Noble Truths, the last two Noble Truths are the superior truth of cessation and superior truth of path. So it says that path is to be meditated upon or familiarized with, and cessation is to be achieved or realized, if you will. So this path and cessation is referring to the Dharma jewel. So it says that which is to be realized. The Prachika Buddhists, the solitary realizers, have an affinity for the Dharma jewel because it's what they rely upon. They rely upon it as in a solitary way, if you will, without the aid of other things than that to achieve their realization. So here we're speaking about the teaching to be realized that the solitary realizers have an affinity for. And then the final, you should appreciate the community or those aspiring to virtue as those with whom you should associate because they have attributes that are similar to your own. So here, one builds confidence. One again, it's very similar to as before. This fostering enthusiasm, slightly different, but similar in the case that one then, because those aspiring to virtue have qualities that are similar to one, then it's possible. So that within there's potential because of this. So here, this is referring to those solitary realizers. I'm sorry, I apologize. Those hearers, the Shravakas, those beings need friends. So they need community. They need, it says, with whom you should associate. They need associates. They need friends in order to reach the state of foe destroyer. They need instructions. So it's for that reason that they have an affinity for the Sangha jewel or those aspiring to virtue. So it's very similar to the points that are made here are very similar to the reasoning found in Maitreya's Sublime Continuum and so forth. So this is the distinction based on devotion. So.
Somba jiba marba, jiba drubi cheba ne rinpa tar cheba tang rindu tangs, ane wade sanji kunju insaro, nenju ju jiwa gomba shawa chu kunju, ane chu tang sanji ki longshu tumu ki druba shawa wos, kaso drubi cheba tuwa tusiris, ta sanji kubon druba, sanji kubon kandes drugu re, sanji kunju kandes drugu kuris, tiba yina rinpa tar cheba tang rindu tangs, na sanji sheju bitule, ane sanji loma shari potan mangeji pala suba, shanchu sen pala suba tuzuke sanji cheba buya, rindu sena ngaso sanji shosa kamba sama suya, chuja o tuzul rindu lagmarwa, rindu shela buya na suba. Tanda ngaso ke sanji ngosu tan jigo mate, sanji kunye tan sula kanta, sanji kubun tubi cheto, ane sanji kubun tubi cheto, ane cheba buya, sanji cheba buya, ane rindu, sanji kunye tuzul chi zama zuya, o tuzul rindu se rala nuyo, o tuz jeba ina, sanji kunju drubas, o tane guna drugu res.
The rinja, the tama gari sumpure, rinja, samazu, gari samazu.
Rindu sen temarwe, da susu gagen kamba tuzul zama zuya,
Oh, okay.
ane tolu chu, ane o tane jena gagen le rindu jesang marwe.
Oh, okay.
ane sanji o sheju gu tuile, ane sanji jeken suge, sanji cheban buyu, ane sanji yosa tu zama zuya, kota nungus jeba yorwa. Tanda nga sul tanda tu yo mare de, ane sanji cheba sayate, ta sanji cheba tanda kashu gore, sanji cheba tenyeji meji saya tonga tanda jamba goga ayu, sanji nye son cheba marwe, chubi kedu banza sheba nye balang gowa yins, banza sayate marwe, ane sanji gong tubi chede shanchu sen goya, doni goya, o tanda jena ane sanji nye nukro, sanji cheba marwe, cheba. Ane sanji ki chi kunye nabato sama suya, sola khan sama suya, o tanda rindu la gondo, rindu. Sanji shiru tuyo sanji ki nasa chuya la suba tanda. Tanda tada tu yo bate, susu ki kamba nila sanji kunya she tata tanda yo jiro, o su sama suya, tuzo o tanda jena rindu se rindu gondo.
That's so. Okay.
Ane shanchu sen kwa, o tanda mendo wa.
That's so. So it begins with the distinction based on practice. It says you should worship and serve the Buddha. So in the Tibetan it says, and it just keeps saying in these stages, in these stages. So according to the order before, basically. So the insert in the English is the for ease is the. You should worship and serve the Buddha just to begin, but it says as order as before, basically in the Tibetan. So you should worship and serve the Buddhists. So worship and serve. Worship here, this chupa is the offering, make offerings and so forth, and making an offering of when we make an offering of our food before we take it in. and so forth, are making offerings on an altar. This would be what this word worship could be also translated as offer. You should make offerings and serve the Buddha. The service of the Buddha. It's difficult to because we would say right now the Buddha isn't present in this world, but if we look at it in terms of how we would relate it to a teacher, so for instance, if we were cleaning the teacher's room or the place that the teacher stays at and keeping it very clean and making sure that their robes and so forth are clean. This would be what this word in here of service is referring to. It's an actual actively serving the Buddha. So it's difficult in these times without Buddha's present, but if we were looking at it in terms of service to the teacher, then this is, Rinpoche just gave an example of it, what service to a teacher, and just what the meaning of this word serve is. It's basically aiding, helping with certain things. But we can say that we have various temples and so forth with the images of enlightenment and so forth. So we can make offerings to those images. And by cleaning the room, then we can imagine that we're cleaning the actual Buddha's room. Because in this case, if we were serving the Buddha, we would be actually, where the Buddha abides, we would go there and we would clean his or her room, and then we would make offerings and so forth to him or her, and clean his or her robes. Because we don't have that opportunity at this moment, we can imagine these things because we do have the depictions and images of enlightenment within the temples and so forth. We also, when we meditate upon the mind that aspires to enlightenment and emptiness, these things become necessary as well. But this is a different type of thing than actually making offerings and giving service. These are different. I think I got everything. I apologize if I missed anything.
다 nenjujuwa gomba sheba 다 chugunjuwa 다 nenjujuwa gomba sheba song dule ane shangchu senpa zuye na shangchu sen gonya ane tuni dubi shira gonya sisi parpashin wata su gonya dili sheba nenjujuwa gomba sheba rangje jena ne rangje shangchu tubi che do ane nganju samba gonya tuni la mi shene dal hatun gonya wata su shira nenjujuwa gomba sheba wata nu gomba yena ane rāje tōlāng jōlāng tōlāng gōlāng wātan rūgō jirō nē jū jīwā gōmbra shēbās ane nye tui jēnā nye tui ki jīwā gōmbra shēbā shāngchū sēmbā yinā shāngchū sēmbā jīwā gōmbra shēbā wātan rūgō sēgō yō nē jū jīwā gōmbra shēbā dāns tā gāni gōnchū wāta jī jū shān mārā.
Okay, so then you should become familiar with the teaching by applying yourself to yoga. So yoga here is referring to the various stages in practice. So if we look at it according to, so here, this is referring to the Dharma jewel in this particular case. So here, if we're looking at what these various vehicles do relating to applying themselves to yoga, beginning with the hearers and solitary realizers vehicle, they accumulate in their own, not as a combination. I'll do it separately. So the hearers vehicle goes through their various stages of practice and so forth, of renunciation and the higher trainings and so forth, and then it achieves their goals. The solitary realizers develop renunciation, a desire to definitely emerge, and then unite those practices as the hearers do with the three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, and then are able to go through the various pathways, whether it's hearers or solitary realizers, pathways of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning to achieve foe destroyer. And then the bodhisattva yana, the bodhisattvas, go through their various pathways, achieve after a desire to emerge the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then traverse the bodhisattva's pathways that are united with the wisdom realizing emptiness of and so forth. So traversing the various paths and grounds to achieve the state of Buddhahood. So the yoga is what this is referring to here are those practices just mentioned that allow those beings to achieve their dharma, their realizations.
다 근육은 주dan sanzin ki lonshu tmo ki dobar shaw chudan sanzin ki lonshu tmo ki dobar shaw ne chuje 근육은 주 간다서 루거스나 ne chu da jebe chungu chu dan dingi chu da jebe chimbi chu wa dan sa ku ju ko na digo ndo chu da sanzin ki lonshu tmo ki dobar shaw was sanzin sana tamarbe da 근육은 le ane 근육은 주 봐봐 있는다 근육이나 다 가지고 가지고 그래 지수자 지라는 데 지부나 아니 근육은 주 지거다 근육은 주이나 다 땡간지 때문에 두개는 마도 초알 되고 그러다 사 동아도 되면은 그 용거지 말보다 되게 로그레스 이사드바 최단 상징기 노조 토목을 두바셔오사 안에 공부술지 모자다 나다지 최바제든 모두 더더블 이제로 하말에 자갈에 파비근이 뭐여봐이나 파비근이여서 두들에 지 수제실라비야 오늘 와들술 상징 두바서 이제로
That's
최단 상징 공부 토목 두바사
Chudan Sanjing Yanja the Donagare
최단은 다 근육건주 그런 집에 중을 주던 딩기 주던 집에 냐네 제고이지로 아
Konso Nyalan Chegudu
고소 냐네 제고
Dain Sunsan Chupabu
어데
Ale Dain Sunsan
상징 드로송도 다 상징이 다 근육건주이나 콜 집에 중을 주던 딩기 주던 집에 침이 주도서 로노 제약에 튀제나모 로브 제바이나 해부 인사다
because Dain Sunsan Konso
다 저런 게 집에 중을 주던 딩기 주던 집에 주도 로노 아버지스 그 로노 제약 튀제는 로바이나 인도
Okay.
상징 로바스나 안에 근육건주 초알된 고바이나 지 상징 넘든 로바이나 안에 근육건주 지 추냐래 제알 해도 그죠 맨도
Okay, so the final speaks about the those aspiring to virtue, supreme rarity, or the Sangha jewel. You should cultivate a relationship with the community, or the Sangha, through sharing the teaching and material goods. So the interpretation here is that the Sangha jewel achieves the realizations of the pathways shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity and great capacity. So here the sharing of the teaching is referring to the because the Sangha jewel has studied very well and achieved the realizations of those various scopes or capacities, then we should, as practitioners, the relationship we have with that community should be one that is such that we pay homage to them and make it so that the teaching is possible. So make it so that these things can go on. So here we have a center. We have a way that the teaching can go on. Previously, when there were superiors, Arya beings in the world, then we could say, this is speaking specifically to them. But now, when we see the ordained community, monks or nuns, we can't say with certainty whether they are the true Sangha, the true Arya community. But if we act as if they are, and we make offerings, and we make the things conducive for them to be able to explain what they have realized, it allows us to achieve the Dharma realization as well. So this is our relationship that we have with the community. So the community, referring to the superior or Arya superiors, but in this case, we can say that if we don't know if a monk or nun is a superior or not, but if we act as if, then we receive that virtue and those qualities later. Decent.
na gnu conju to zul gnu ta gnu to zul da na ji chu lo no je ya da ane kar chu re wo to zul an ji sa zin kham ba da lo je no to zu ro je ba ina man chu ro chu ya bu ji o to je ne ko gnu to ro je ba ina an gnu to chu ro ro da chu ro so na ane chu ko thon lo je ung re gon lo je ung re mo lo je ung re thon lo ba da gon lo ba da Malu lamba to genu konju yong marba genu konju drus the nezarba.
So when one goes towards the practices and goes for refuge towards the Sangha jewel, then here it first speaks of the teaching that is shared, and that's speaking of the teachings of small, medium, and great capacity. So this is what is shared. Because the community has achieved those various realizations, and through this, and then it says, and then one material good. So this is food and a house and so forth, creating the place where the Sangha community can live and eat and so forth, so that they can transmit this teaching. So by doing so, we then can become those being on the path of accumulation, a being on the path of preparation, a being on the path of seeing, a being on the path of meditation, a being on the path of no more learning, and so forth. So here it says sharing the teaching. This is they're sharing the teaching. We're creating the environment that will allow this to go on, so that then we can achieve those realizations of the pathways.
And the Ganu Kajiki Dindu Lanya Laje Ure, Kajiki Tabi Lanya Laje Ure, Kajiki Tibachimi Lanya Laje Ure, Tajeba Ina, and Kale Kale, Netu Ganu Dan, Raja Ganu, and Shaju Sembi Ganu, Sanjila Sutu Yungu, Rusa, Otanamandua.
So then, by practicing the various teachings and by making offerings and so forth to the those aspiring to virtue, we then can achieve the various, through the stages of the teachings of for beings of small, medium, and great capacities, achieve the state of superior, of the hearers, solitary realizers, bodhisattva, and Buddha superiors, which would be all Sangha. So the hearers, superior, solitary realizer, bodhisattva, and Buddha superiors, all being the Sangha jewel. So we can achieve those various goals. So it's we'll now take a short break and give out. So the two solitary realizer are the ones like a horn, like a rhino, and those abiding in community. So those are the two names.
Jesu drubi chebanes, Jesu drubi chebane, detar Sanji Junden de ne, Shesu Je, Sombi Yunten Soso Temba Osa, Jesu drubi cheba to Teredua, Tambu de Senil Jubi cheba, Niba, Chenrezig cheba, Somba Mapi cheba, Jeba drubi cheba, Naba Jesu drubi cheba marba, Naba Jesu drubi cheba de, Naba Jesu drubi cheba Teredua da, Sanji Gunju, Chu Gunju, Genu Gunju Somo de Lienten Yoda, Sanji Gunju Lienten Yoare, Sanji Gunju Yenten, Kui Yenten, Song Yenten, Tuji Yenten, Chile Yenten, Song Swan, Sanji Gunju Lienten. And then Genu Gunju Yenten, Genu Gunju Duba Gronda, Chile Cheba, Chuji Gugela Sheba, Watanage, Chu Gunju Yenten, Song Swan, and then Genu Gunju Yenten, Duba Gronda, and then Chumawa, Chusamba, the Jig, Momoson,
Ngama Chugu.
Then also Julama Jena and the Sanji Gunju, the Jeden, Dumashi, 현지 조jen지 jen지 도메바 첸드스다 넘어 되니되면 사진이 사진군 주연된 지대 추근주래 사면님의 도메바 다시니 비슈니 연대 지대 근육군주 제다 진에 나가는 시수 연대 지대 말이야 다 간데 사진군 주연된다 추근주 연된다 근육군주 연된 너무 쉐바지 안는 마지바 야는 템바들라 제수 주어서 드리면 돼 제수 줘봐. 네, 건조성이 된도 쉐바지 신의 마제바들 제수 좀 봐. 나빠가지 봐.
Don't forget.
What is it?
That's it.
다들 인치 갈래로다. 루비 제수 템비 쳐봐네. 내들 손지 존는데 되네. shesu jis sombi yente soso temba was sombi yente se saji gonju chu gonju genu gonju sombo de yente soso de tambo sheba je na maje ba tan was
Lesser.
what is in zamar
Lesser.
what ku inche tulu
Lesser. The distinction based on recollection. You should recollect the good qualities of each of the three jewels by reciting thus the Bhagavan. So here we went over the excellent qualities of the various jewels. So this recollection is repeatedly thinking about it, so one doesn't forget. So the excellent qualities of the Buddha. So we went over the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. And then we went over the excellent qualities of the Dharma. And then it speaks of the Dharma giving rise to the Buddha's excellent qualities, dividing it, and so forth, emanating it, etc. So we spoke of the excellent qualities in the section on the excellent qualities of the Dharma. The excellent qualities of the Sangha dealt with the excellent qualities of giving the teaching and trusting itself to the teaching and so forth. So we found that the excellent qualities of the Sangha were that they conducted themselves according to the Dharma, and then gave the actual teachings and so forth, the instructions, and they were the most excellent practitioners of the teaching. So then these were the excellent qualities that we found about the Sangha jewel. So when we look at this point here, in this recollection, we do this again and again, and by doing so, we have a firm understanding of these distinctions that we don't forget because we are remembering it or thinking about it again and again. So that's the point that's made here. So it says, "Thus the Bhagavan," etc., etc. Here, this is just meaning to not forget it, to think about it.
Yes, man. What there is what that you that's what my do have to do.
So then we also So then when we look at what the actual Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha jewel is, we can find that each of those, when we define them or we look at the definition of them, have 8 excellent qualities. So we look at the Sublime Continuum to find the definition of each of these 3 different jewels. So first, in the Sublime Continuum defines the Buddha jewel as the essence of the Buddha possessing the 2 sets of meaning, ability, compassion, exalted wisdom of others' condition, spontaneity, and unconditioned. So we found then 8 excellent qualities. And the Dharma jewel is the pure path in the continuum of superiors possessing excellent qualities. Dharma is defined as that which is possessing the 2 truths, free from desire, is an antidote, lucid, pure, non-conceptual, non-dual, and inconceivable. And then the Sangha jewel being defined as the intelligent, irreversible assemblage possessing the highest excellent qualities, pure, perceiving reality and diversity throughout exalted wisdom. So these define those 3 jewels, and then there's 8 excellent qualities we discussed previously related to that definition and so forth. So we think about these different distinctions and we don't forget them, and then that's what this means, distinction based on recollection. Gongel mebachi the tseni jason.
Yeah. What the Jesu tembi cheba, what the Jesu tembi cheba ne Detara Junden de Tene, Shesu, Junden de Tene, Shesu, Jason Bay, and then Sosa Jamba was Junden de 중단에서 다시 하도 추군주 가도 되서봐. 추군 추지에는 손질로 그 주센드시네 데 타다 타예반데네 론도 두비 중고바다 라지데바 쮸봉바다 예데 두비 다닝고도 시바다 공발레쇼 템바데 쮸양다바도 단데 가도 쮸양다바 되발레 손지 존덴데 되네 손지 존덴데 되네 예데 타예바 맘메바데 되는 막고 인서바 맘메바데 ane chuya taba duba le chule cheba chuji gugela shoba chuji treba chuji daba joba chuji chule shwa chuji shu chula tamba chuji treba des odi enten so tamba ches sonden serva na genu duba le tare doa duba le chumawa genu chumawa chusheba chusamba chuji shin 춘진바 출라된바 출라 줘바 추지 샤와시바 추지시 안에 추셔바 방송소바 라지지 장와 라지지 다바 제스 희지 추진 희지 당된바 다도 MB 쇼유와 다도 출라줘와 다도 가비 쇼바 오냐바서 와드스기에 된투스 마트레송 인지가 또 뒤박을 오니 로지로자지래 다가다 되는 맞을 때는 아니 사실 건축에 대해 최주 건축에 대해 괜히 건축에 대해서 야버시바지 대 마지바지 대워스 예수 담비셔바도 드리면 사실에 대해 다 줄라말 전에 대해 제대 말까 추건주 사주건주에 대지 추건주에 대지 내려건주에 대지요 도서 시바지 근데 마지막 된거스 근데 다드네 라리 잡은날 다 사주건주 구이에 대 소근에 대 토지에 대 칠레지에 대 어떤 송송 다 추건주래 출레 제바 뒤바고 놓다네 추지 고기라 줘봐 shesu marwa dana ganyu ko shemo yate mo so to the shibaji majiba drangwaras what is that
okay so then this last section again it says recollect the good qualities of each of the three jewels by reciting thus the Bhagavan. So then we look at the excellent qualities that we've spoken about of the Bhagavan, of the Buddha. The Buddha has the excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. And then we look next towards the next jewel, the Dharma jewel. And then in the compendium of teachings, we find in Asanga's compendium of teachings, we find the Dharma jewel. It says that the Dharma, when speaking about the Bhagavan Buddhas, creates and governs them. They arise from the teaching and are within the sphere of the teaching and depend on the teaching, and the teaching produces them. So here we find this is an excellent quality of the teaching because it's giving rise to the Bhagavan and the Buddhas, and then the excellent qualities of the Sangha jewel, where it speaks again in the compendium of teachings that the community teaches the teaching, practices it, and reflects on it, and is within the teaching's sphere, or is with the teaching's field. So here the compendium of teaching speaks of the community here, those who aspire to the virtue, the Sangha jewel, and the excellent quality being that they actually give the instructions of the teachings and practices it, and so forth. They're examples of the actual Dharma itself. So the teaching here teaches the Dharma. The teaching here is specifically referring to the Dharma. So this is an excellent quality. So we find in Maitreya's Sublime Continuum and the various other commentaries, Panchen Sanadrapa's Parshin Shitten, we went over the 8 different excellent qualities of each of these jewels. So we would look at the 8 excellent qualities of the Buddha jewel, the 8 excellent qualities of the Dharma jewel, the 8 excellent qualities of the Sangha jewel, and we would reflect on this again and again and again. And now we would be able to know the distinctions and not forget them. So this is the practice of recollection. So there isn't a forgetting of these distinctions, and the recollection is of the excellent qualities and so forth.
What is that? Just Jimmy Cheba, that's not people let Jubi Cheba. So not people let Jubi Cheba the Rendua, the Gazerendo. Senil Jubi Cheba, Chile Cheba, Mabi Cheba, Ruby Cheba, just Jimmy Cheba. That's not people the Remde.
Drupa.
Druba Remde, Druba. Druba, so not people let Jubi Cheba ne. Gaza the Chuju want the Shebi, so no two people this. Gaza want the Sona Pevade, Sanji Conjur, Genu Conjunitres, Sanji Conjula Dene, and Kazasul Sona Mompetugre, Dene Genu Conju, Dene Kazal Sona Mompetugres. That Chuju want the Shebas that Chu Conjudim, Chu Conju. Kaza no Chuju want the Shebi, Sona Chu Pevade. Sanji da Ganini ne Tambi want to Sheba in Lasa. Sanji da Ganini ne Kazak want to Sheba Sona Pivate. Sanji Conjudan, Genu Conjun Jagures.
Tambo.
Sanji Conju the Genu Conjun with the Kazak want to Shene, Sona Pivate.
Less so.
Sanji Conjudan, Genu Conjun Jazz.
Less so.
They are Kazak G down Mabula Tembi, Sona Pi Cheba Yuaris. Sanji Conjudan. Genu Conjun with Gaza Mobile Tene, Sonapi the Chila Tene, Sonapi Cheba Yuaris, Sanji Conju de Gaza Chila Tene, Sonapi Turis, Genu Conju de Gaza Mobile Tene, Sonapi Wajaguris, Tapana Genu Conju Gazo, Papi Geni in a Genichi Genu Conju Roda.
Less so.
Suji Glon Jilla, Genu Conju Zagadua, what the lady do. Genu Langabaje, Jigubes in the Dua.
Less so.
Then Gaza, Chidan, Gaza want to see Chapa, Gaza want to see Sona Pivate, Sanji to the Ganu Conjuniers. Then Gaza Chig want to see Sona Pivate, Sanji Conjuniers. Gaza Mobile then Sona Pivate Ganu Conjuniers.
Yeah. So here, now we've gotten to the 6th point. So we've gone over the distinction based on defining characteristics. We've gone over the distinction based on enlightened activities, the distinction based on devotion, distinction based on practice, the distinction based on recollection, and now we've arrived at the distinction based on how they increase merit. So it says supreme merit is increased through the influence of either persons or teachings. The Buddha and the community are instances of the former. Also, you can increase merit and dependence on either a single person or many persons. The community is a case of the latter because it requires 4 monks. So here we begin, it says the supreme merit is increased through the influence of either persons or teachings. So persons here are referring to the 2 of the jewels, the Buddha jewel and the Sangha jewel, or those aspiring to virtue jewel. So the teaching jewel is the teaching. So the first, it says the Buddha and the community are instances of the former. So here it says you can increase merit and dependence on either a single person. So in the case of the Buddha, we would say this would be our ability to increase merit related to them, related to a single person or a single being, a person being. And then in the case of the Sangha, it says many persons, because we've learned that all superiors in any among the vehicles are considered the Sangha jewel, or Sangha community, Sangha. So those are many persons. And then if we look at the non-Arya nominal Sangha jewel, we can say that it consists of a grouping of 4 ordained practitioners in one place. So that also refers to multiple, and then not only multiple, but there's the need for it to be a person. So this, when we're speaking of persons, we're referring to either the Buddha jewel in a singular sense, if it's just Buddha, and then in the Sangha jewel, we're speaking of a lot of different members.
What is that about?
This Sanjay Mambo Yure. Dene Sanji
다
Gonchu.
산지 샤자도 답을
Okay, lesson.
어디 초밥에바이나 가자 찔했더니 소나
Lesson.
근데 이제 마상나
Lesson.
제메지로다
Lesson.
근데 이제 상소나
Lesson.
아니 이제 다 자다 동동 트도 가진 뒤바이나 근데 뭐벌 어디 집에 소나 뭐 배고 이제
So Rinpoche, I was asking Rinpoche, so there's many Buddhas just like there's many Aryas, many different Buddhas. He's saying if we're referring to the object of one specific Buddha, if we took Buddha Shakyamuni for instance, but if we're looking at the an ordained grouping, we would need 4 specifically, and then if we're looking at Aryas in general, there's many Aryas. But the point was made. He said, but if the one singular we're speaking of would be in the case of the singular Buddha, one specific Buddha, such as Buddha Shakyamuni. And then we can accumulate and increase our merit in large ways because of the numbers. There could be four Sangha jewels or 1,000 or more. Rinpoche kept naming higher numbers, more and more Sangha jewels, so we can increase our merit in great ways because of the numbers.
다 체바시부고는 저도 로들을 주지 생일을 주비 체바시부고 생일 주비 체바 텔레지 체바 메비 체바 안에 메비 체바로 루비 체바 되네 가래 좀 제수 템비 체바 되네 소나 체바 조드르는데 어디 루시는 어디 버찬 거도 체바시부고는 저도 로 주데 어디 버찬으로 다 켈레메고는 저수로 안데르노 켈레메고는 저수송한 들레라버자 사질라 템바다스 냐안데라 중고 정고다 게뉴건줄라 저수송네 로유고네 저수로와데스 되게 뒤중아서 시에다는데 사질고주도 해마다버레스 저템바버레스 추건주도 해다버레스 안에 해다버지 게뉴건주 저두빈다루 어떤선 어떤 대답이지라더니 킬레부군 저수로 되는데
맞아요.
사실은 저 담바부 킬레 아니 주건주 저거 매단다와 사실건주도 매바단다와 저 담바부 킬레 아니 주건주도 매단다와 저거 뭐다 게뉴건주 저주빈다루 다루스 킬레부군 저수로 들어오대 킬레부군 저수로 들어 도와 자친 데레 종아타 로사 되디마도 무도
So the question is a little easier. It's quite abbreviated and quite small. It's going for refuge through commitment, or also could be translated as through assertion, one's assertion. So according to Dharma Mitra's commentary on the Sutra on Discipline, going for refuge through commitment means upholding the Buddha as the teacher of refuge. So through assertion would be asserting, upholding the Buddha as the teacher of refuge, the teaching nirvana as the actual refuge, and the community as those who assist us to attain refuge. So here we would look at it, the Buddha being like a doctor. When we look at the case of an illness and a diagnosis and so forth, that the Buddha would be like the doctor. It says as the teaching of refuge, and the teaching nirvana as the actual refuge. And it says that the Dharma, previously we mentioned, is similar to the medicine that one takes to cure one's illness. So the Dharma becomes like the medicine. So it says the teaching, the nirvana, as the actual refuge, and the community as those who assist us to attain refuge. So the community is compared to a nurse. The Sangha is compared to a nurse or a helpful aid or a helper, a helpful friend to aid us to achieve the refuge, or to attain refuge. So here this section deals with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and their various roles, and we've seen the previous comparisons to a doctor, medicine, and a helpful aid or a nurse.
What that came up with just do what did the Labyrinth do you know what the Piju Mambachi do that? Sanji the Jotamba Boris, Chugonju Pendant our Jones, the new can do in the Mobishedro, or the Bishi, so to the rolling head you are. That and the ma Kaju, Tamalama, 10 years, Cheba Shebukun Johnson do a truth, the Ladin mumble the Sigmadota, the ring of the rose in Rota, Kaji Abang, Kaji and Rabel, Calais, Hansantona, Calais.
So then this section that deals with going for refuge through commitment is quite a small section, but here at the center, we've gone over many times this idea of what the Buddha's qualities and the Dharma and Sangha and so forth, and how the Buddha is like a doctor and the Dharma is like a medicine, and that the Sangha is like a helpful aid or an assistant or a nurse, and what the meaning behind that is. So we can begin to understand and acknowledge what this means, or going for refuge through assertion or commitment, by way of knowing these 6 points that are mentioned before. And there's some commentaries are clearer than others, and some don't even, some of these points aren't even made clear. But if we go through these 6 points, the distinction based on defining characteristics, enlightened activities, based on devotion, based on practice, based on the recollection, and based on the increase of merit, then will become clearer and clearer, and we'll be able to go for refuge through this assertion, our own assertion, through our own commitment. So this commitment is like our own, it's not a commitment to do it, we're committed because we assert this is it. This is our assertion. So I'm not trying to play with words or be bombastic or anything like that. I just want to get the clarity of what the Tibetan is trying to bring as best as possible to connect it with the commentary. Thank you.
What did that know what did come to that? Gentleman, my goodness, Joseph Swan, gentleman, my goodness, Joseph Swan, do I, gentleman, my goodness, Joseph Swan, what did Nenga
This Oh, next page. 42.
Doa Jason de Lenjon Taros. Sanju Conju Temba Bodan, Chu Conju Muda, Ganu Conju Jodu, the Rui, but Susan Dusana, Doa Jason de Le Sondos, Son Atares, Jon Taros, Doa Jason de Veji, Dutawa, Jason de. Jachin Dale and John Taros, what the son de Doa Jachin Dale son dos. Jeto Mama, you're going to choose some was a dandere one, the Deltes in the Gamo, the Sibi Hondo. Nambatan, Shibi Demba, Nambatan, Shibi Demba Lumarecha Yuares, Nambatan, Shibi Demba Lumarecha Yuares, Nambatan, Shibi Tenekazure. Luba Nali, Chumek Chaba Yuares, Chaba Songe Udua, Shanang Tembi Chaba, Tembi Chabara, and Gazure, Lubabi Chaba, Chumek Chaba, Chaba Shene, Conjus Konala, Jausu Zinji, Jeto Mamayu, Jeta Matubi, Temba Sola, Jausu Mazimbaos. Teniji Cheba, that the Redwata Gentle Mama going to Rotan, but the Tembi Cheba, Tembi Cheba, Tembi Sheba Naba, Sheba Nabaji, and Tembi Cheba the Kandayu. Shaja to Naba Sanji with Tembarua. That should be number Troja, Mother, Meti number two, Chasing Sus. Should Meti with number two euro. What the should be number down, Meti with Nami Temba Lumarecha Kariwares, Chilendua, Tembi Cheba. Then the Tembi Cheba should be Temba down, Nami Temba Lumarecha Kariwares. Tembi Tanchu Nanite, London to be Danite, then they shed on Majetan, Ruba Shibukunao. Lonchu didn't want to change it down to be Temba Houseman Yalantis. Lonchu didn't want Longi Chukus and Sanjay Kamariva. Longi Chukus and Sanjay with us beach. Longi Tembas and a kanju tenju samandi. Longi Temba. That Longi Temba Zibi, Longi Temba Zendu Garden Zingure, to be Temba Zena Garden Zingure, Sna, Longi dinner son Chenya dance, dinner son Ragi Nyalaje, and the Jen Shebatele, Longi Temba Zingres, 롱슈 드는 손지 체년다스 드는 손가비 드는 드든도 드는 두서 당게 장래지 젠세 녀바들라 롱게 때만 잡아서레스 롱슈 드는 손지 체년다 두비 때만 하송 장래 두비 때마다 손지 가다 땡주는 손잡아 간가로 수신 장래지 잡아 사바송 장래들라 두비 때마서 그래스 두비 때만 하송 장래 어떻게 해야 되는데 다 쇼르비 덤바다 나비 덤바기 쳐봐. 다 쇼르비 나비 덤바다 쇼르비 덤바기 쳐버린도다. 다 나비 덤바다 중국에 요대 그대레스. 나비 덤바다 중국에 요대 그대레스. 쇼르비 덤바들 두버레스. 중국에 말에 요대 그대 말레스. 어떻게 해야 말베. 덤비 쳐봐. 덤비 쳐봐.
So we begin with going for the next section, going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge others' refuges. The Tsong-kha-pa, Tsong-sheda Tsong.
Lungada.
The Chenrezig, the Dubi.
What didn't this that don't be chaba, that don't be chaba, Sugushi Marba. Should Nabi Dambas and Shajatuba, Shajatuba, Namasanji with Dambaro, Shajaman Buddha. Nabasanji with Damba Marbe, Nabasanji with Damba Shajaman Buddha, the Junkunzi, Numo, the City of Maru, Pon Sabaris. You then Sama and Shajatuba, you are as you then Gunzubares, Marbe.
Less,
Junkunzi, then Guderes,
Dumba Shak,
Damba Jeroa,
Ale.
That should be Damba, the Junkunzi Maris, and then Gude Maris. 다 남아산지 비tem바데 ane 샤추그 센다 샤추그 센다 돈이도 비셔러라 소바 양손라바데 되네 녀모바데 시지저바 공비 놓고 산지 자송으로 덤바 잡아 말베
라서
시리비 덤바스 ane 저는 대바주와 유에스고아레 저는 대바주와 유에스고아레 간사그다 유에스고아레 대바주와 유에스 Deba Druva US again that Deba Madus again in the Deba Kakai, Deba Madruva Gumba, Deba de la Sanjere, Deba Druvan Zembe, Louis Debetele, and the water sherry with the Mazul.
Lasso. Here is going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuges. Here it's the difference in teachers. Is what it says here. So the distinction of teacher. So what is distinction of teacher here? When we speak of teacher and we're speaking towards our tradition, our teacher, we're speaking of Shakyamuni Buddha. When we speak of it in the sense of Buddhism in this word here, teacher, it's referring to a Bhagavan, to the Shakyamuni Buddha. The teacher of this time is Shakyamuni. So here, the teacher, according to Buddhism, is the most excellent type of teacher. So the difference in teacher. What is the difference in teacher here? The difference in teacher here is referring to versus a Buddhist teacher and a non-Buddhist teacher. So what is the difference in teacher? So here, Buddha Shakyamuni, for instance, has abandoned all negativities and achieved all excellent qualities. Buddha Shakyamuni has been able to, through practicing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and uniting that with the wisdom realizing emptiness, traverse the various paths and grounds and gotten rid of or abandoned all of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So he has achieved the state of perfection as a completely full realized being without it's reached the state of all-knowing. There's no higher state of achievement because he's traversed the various pathways which result in the eradication of these negativities. For instance, the other practitioners who grasp, who are would be considered other, it's really outsiders, and outside of what? Outside of Buddhism. So that would be the most literal translation, the Buddhist and outsiders. So outsiders' view is that there is a truly established self. That phenomena is truly established. So the result of that grasping creates a different result or a different teacher than the result of negating that grasping, meditating on bodhicitta and eradicating the afflictions and so forth. So the result is different, so the teacher is different. So this is why it says there is a difference. So when we look at when we're talking about scripture, when we look at what the Buddhist teaching is, if we say scriptural turning of the wheel, or scriptural dharma, then we're necessarily talking about the Buddha Shakyamuni, or the Buddha's pronouncements, the three baskets, the Vinaya, the Sutra basket, the Vinaya basket, and the Abhidharma basket. So when we're speaking of that, we're speaking specifically of the three baskets, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. So this is the scriptural Dharma. If we're speaking of scriptural truth, then we can say that scriptural truth can be any explanation given within the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, or the Tenjur, the authentic Indian commentaries related to the three baskets of instruction, the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket. And if it is realizational truth, it is necessarily the practice of the scriptural truth. So it's the practice of that scriptural truth that leads to the realization of it. So this is the scriptural truth. So if it's a scriptural, it's a realizational truth. So if it's scriptural truth, it is anything taught by the Kangjur and Tanjur about the three baskets. If it's realizational truth, it's a realization achieved through those teachings. But if it is a scriptural if it is a scriptural doctrine, so then it is necessary. Rinpoche, the Lungchukor, so if it is a scriptural turning a wheel of Dharma, it is necessarily, that's what it is. If it's, I might misread my notes. So if it's I'm just going to redo that section very fast. If it's a scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma, it is necessarily the Buddha turning the wheel of the Dharma, teaching any among the three baskets. If it's a scriptural truth, it's any among the teachings of the Kangjur and Tanjur about the three baskets. And if it's a realizational truth, it's a practice of what is contained in the Kangjur and Tanjur about the three baskets that allows one to realize it. So scriptural turning of the wheel refers to a Buddha teaching. Scriptural truth can be in Kangjur and Tanjur. So sorry about the mixing up of the words for a moment, but that's the final fact on that. So the reason, so when we go back to the English, it says going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuges means, first of all, understanding the differences in worth between Buddhist and non-Buddhist teachers, teachings, and disciples, for then you will uphold only the three jewels as your refuge and refuse teachers, teachings, disciples that do not accord with them. Distinctions between Buddhist and non-Buddhist teachers, etc., are as follows. And then it gets into the points that were just kind of summarized. It is without fault and has all excellent qualities, why the path that's practiced is different, so the result is different, etc., etc. So these are the points that are logically made here to cite this. It isn't just stated. Just to state it, it's stated with then logical proof that's about to be given. There's a section I know that I have missed, and Rinpoche gave some divisions, and I just apologize. I don't even have a frame of reference to ask to go back to it, so I missed something, and I do apologize for that.
Nambala soba chasu mazimba wosi tenyi ji cheba ta shibi temba danabi tembi cheba shibi temba danabi temba ki cheba kale yungu ta ngazu ten juna re ta tembi cheba tere doa shaja tuba naba sanjibi temba rwa ane shiribi temba mati shiribi temba droyo mati temba droyo ta lejin su tazu shiribi temba rwa ta nambi tembi cheba nes Sanje ne Jeme Jin Yue Dulas, Shaja Tuba Tabute, and Nyomoba the Shi Division Yu Mare, Yue Kangalo and Shaja Tuba Luares, Jeme Jin Yue Las. Jeji Temba Nes, that Matibi Temba, Tembala Subatazun Tele Do Tesa. Jun Meba Jun Yu are Yue Yonsu Mazubaris, what the shade Marve. They what the Alle Techila should Mare. So
it says the difference among the difference. Just want to see something here real quick. Okay, so the difference in teachers. So it's here. It says the Buddha has all the excellent qualities. It's faultless. We then look Shingi Dumba at others' teachers and look at what the difference between we find what the differences are. So the distinction that Buddha is without fault and has perfected all. So we're going to skip down to the next part, the distinction of the teacher. The Buddha is without fault and has perfected good qualities, but the teachers of other religions are the opposite of this. So here, this is the first point that's made, is the Buddha is out without fault. Decent.
That don't be chaba no, that tambo, don't be chaba, tembagi chaba, ruby chaba, soon, that don't be chaba, should be temba, Nami tembal chaba carrivarsana, don't be chaba de undua. Sanji ne, Jun Meji, Shajatuba, Sanji, Shajatuba ne, Jun Mejis, Mobat Shiji, Jun Yamare, Yoden Yosubares, Jeji temba teledote, Jun Yuare, Yoden. Yonsu Mazubares, China Dabatuans and Guetan, and Namba Tabaina, and Jim Maba Marin, and Yonsu do Marisa Guezerova. Chaba Patu Les, well, I let the Dama Jujuna.
So the Buddha is without faults and has perfected good qualities, but the teachers of other religions are the opposite of this. And then there's a quote from who? Udbata Siddhivamins, praise of the exalted, the Sanjake. The Sanjake meaning the Shirakali Kapalu. Shirakali Kapalu. So Udbata Siddhivamins, praise of the exalted one. So then we have a quote from an Indian master, obviously, that will relate to the distinctions related to teacher. If I miss my section here, it is a refusal of acknowledging outsiders' refuge, and then the distinction about the teacher. But the first part deals with the difference between a Buddhist teacher and non-Buddhist teacher, as it reads, as I read, and now we're in that next section.
That the Swiss was in a Cheba Patules.
Okay, so the praise of the exalted one will be quoted now.
Dan Dumba Jambone, Dan Dumba Jambone, Jonde Chola Josie, and then Dan Sheribi Tambala Subatuzungapone, Shaja to what Chola Josun is, Jonde Chola Josuche. Dumba Jambone, Sanji Shaja to what Josun Jusenkaras, the G led to Shena. Teji Jusen Karas na wise at Reba. Teji led the Shena. Chun German ala Yenten, Shaja to what Chun Mare, and then Yenten Yuzu Chul never image. The Isozang, Sherry with Namal Johnson to me, Choron Johnson to use. Teji led the Shena, German ala Yenten, German Yenten never image. The Isozang Sherry with Namal Johnson to me.
Okay, so then praise of the exalted one. Having forsaken other teachers, I go for refuge to O Bhagavan. So here this is saying, not acknowledging the outsiders, outsider teachers, I go for refuge to the Buddha. So I don't acknowledge outsiders' teachers. I go for refuge to the Buddha. So what is the reason for this? And the supporting reason is, if someone should ask why, it is because you have no faults and possess all good qualities. So the Buddha has achieved the state which is beyond the afflictive obstructions and gotten rid of the obstructions to omniscience. So has achieved the state of all-knowing, where there is an abandonment of all faults and an achievement of all excellent qualities possible. So this is why it says that I go for refuge, because it's the ultimate object to go for refuge, the being to go for refuge to. And then it says, and also, so then it'll get into some more points. So this is also from that quote.
Cheta cheta nang sambas, tasul san tang yung du, teta teta nguen chue la, dag sen teba jurus. Meti jen yung lu tu san mabu tang ne, san mabu tang du ku chuen mabu yu jirwa. Chuen mabu yu zang, rang me ba ne, shacha tu bala jiao sun du dus, jiao du yung dus. Cheta cheta nang samba, teta teta nguen chue la, dag sen teba jurus. Mabu shacha tu ba chue la, dag sen teba yung dus. Tata Tanji Chen maybe Ruti Junji Lasen dance. Teta Tanji Chemba Mayimbi, and then Jamba Gangalo, then the Trotaka Junji Jundus Jun. Ruti Junji Lasen dance, Shiriba Tuzula. Dema Drubala, Dema Tru, Dadu Madrubala, Dadu Trus, Lodi Yenta, Trota Tanizun Yenta, the Junji Kuru Jundus. Sala Naji Jumeba, Samba Dan, Laba Naji Jumebi, Demba Chujamotongos. Sala Naji Jumeba, Shajatubal Jun Mare, Yenden Yusu Zubare, Shajatuba de, Yenden Yusu Zubadan, Jumeba de, and the Kuzu Tontu, Kuzu Rota Yuzan, and Tongo Maris.
Because of wrong view.
Demba Chujamotongos, Sheson, what they were Jujana.
The Tambo Yanj the Mute Shengi Shunlula Jita Nam Sampa.
Mate Jen Junu, that Sheriff Pachamobile, Sheriff Pachamobile, Honsan Mobutamba Yin, Rujon Jiba Yins, Kugangatana Shesons, Junlu La, Jeta Mate Junlu to Tanda the San Tandu, could you Jerota? That time going to La. So here
it says, and also, the more I reflect on other non-Buddhist traditions, the greater becomes my faith, O protector. Their minds are ruined by the faults of tenets devised by those who are not omniscient. Those whose minds are ruined cannot even see you, faultless teacher. So here, where we begin, the more I reflect on. So the more that, here this is saying, the more that there is a study of the non-Buddhist traditions and an intense analysis of the Buddhist doctrine, the comparison can be made and the faults or non-faults can be seen. So it says the more one reflects upon both the outsider's doctrines and the Buddhist doctrine, one will clearly see the qualities of the Buddhist doctrine, and one will then have great faith in the Buddha and the Buddha's doctrine. So it says by thinking about it and studying the non-Buddhist tradition or outsider's tradition and the Buddhist tradition and comparing them, one will see the greatness of the Buddhist doctrine and then go develop a faith and go for refuge. And it says those whose mind are ruined by the faults of tenets. So here it's saying the faulty tenets. So because it says they're devised by one who is not omniscient, because the tenet systems are devised by a being whose result is not an all-knowing state, an omniscient state, free of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, their tenets are faulty. And therefore, we find tenets that are statements that things are truly established, phenomena is truly, definitely established, the self is truly established or truly existent. So because they were not taught by, these tenets were not taught by an omniscient being, they are faulty. And it says, those whose minds are ruined can't even see you faultless teacher. So it says, those whose minds have been ruined by wrong view, teachings that are wrong view, can't even see the excellent qualities of the Buddha because their minds have been corrupted by all of these faulty ways of understanding and so forth that are not correct. So there's a couple of points that are made here. It says, the more that I reflect on the two traditions, outsiders' traditions and Buddhist traditions, the more faith I develop in the Buddhist tradition. And it says that it's because the mind of an omniscient being would create the perfect tenets, the without fault, tenets without fault. And if a teacher isn't omniscient, then they can't create a faultless tenet system. If someone follows a faulty tenet system, then their mind becomes ruined and they can't even see what is right any longer. So the point that's being made here is that the wrong view can obscure what is right. So this is the difference. The difference of teacher, or the distinction of the teacher. And the previous paragraph I read through is all as it reads. So I'll just reread it just in case I missed the last line or something. Going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuges. Going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuge means, first of all, understanding the differences in worth between Buddhist and non-Buddhist teachers, teachings, and disciples. For then you will uphold only the three jewels as your refuge and refuse teachers, teachings, and disciples that do not accord with them. The distinctions between Buddhist and non-Buddhist teachers are as follows. The distinction of teacher, the differences between teacher. The Buddha is without fault and has perfected good qualities, but the teachers of other religions are the opposite of this. So the other religious teachers are not without fault. They have achieved different results, so they don't have all of these excellent qualities that are free of faults. So it says, having forsaken other teachers, I go for refuge to you, O Bhagavan. If someone should ask why, it's because you have no faults and possess all excellent qualities. The more I reflect on other non-Buddhist traditions, outsiders' traditions, the greater my faith becomes, O protector. And this is, O Buddha. Their minds are ruined by faults of tenets devised by those who are not omniscient. Those whose minds are ruined cannot even see you, faultless teacher.
Oh yeah, that the net is okay. That's oh yeah. What that can say? Sheriba okay, and then Nabal joined to log.
So non-Buddhists then would say Buddhists are wrong. So
Namba Jena what the Sheriba there is. So that can't the Jebashin and Trambajin touches whatever.
It's important when we make lines of division that we make lines of division based on knowing what the differences really are, and not just dividing it. We are Buddhists. It's no benefit to us to say that non-outsider view or non-Buddhists, outsiders sounds funny, but it's literal, but non-Buddhists' views are it wouldn't be beneficial to say that they're bad or good for us to say they're bad.
타바 투지 라다 워도 속가 셰고르스 다메다 데바니다 데바젤라도 야마시나 타바 투도 마다 워도 셰비체도 안네 저바 셰고르스
알레 앙에 첸소
저바 셰고르스 다 담보 그네 제르룬 너스나 녀바 여마르제버다 제주 지바니 녀바메스
So I won't be able to quote it exactly, but we should realize that even when we're doing debate and we're debating the various differences in views of other systems and so forth, we shouldn't be doing this for the sake of our competition or defeating another opponent. We should be doing it to get to the bottom of what the pathways to liberation truly are, what the two truths truly are, what the Four Noble Truths truly are, what the nature of reality really is. So it's for the point of getting to the bottom of those points and not for the sake of defeating or embarrassing others. What one view, Rinpoche said, quoted something like, the view that I hold might anger another without aid or not without helping them. So we have to look at those distinctions and realize that when we're engaging in debate and so forth, it's for the point of investigation and analysis and not for like ego or, I wish I could find the exact quote. So it's for the point of that. Kapkagi. It's fine. It's in the Madhyamika Avatar by Chandrakirti. So now we should make very good aspirations, please. Everyone here listened very well. So thank you so much. So slowly we'll be able to understand this information.
Yeah.
So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And again, thank you everyone for coming. It shouldn't be for The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the five great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rimchi Gutsi Shapi Denron